Welcome to Crossroad Connection. We're speaking out for those left unheard. My name is David Scheringa. I'm the host of your program. I'm the president of Crossroad Bible Institute. You know that here at Crossroad, we're very much interested and invested in issues of social concern. We want to help people in prison to be prepared for reentry, but also we're concerned about systems that can be hurdles to our students once they get out. And today we're going to talk about a problem here in the United States as well as over in Africa. And the first thing we're going to talk about is about poverty. And I'd like to welcome to the program my good friend Peter Vandermeulen, who is the director of the Office of Social Justice and something to do with hunger.
And hunger action.
Hunger
Right,
action
right.
with the Christian Reformed Church. And he's been on the program before, and also some of your staff have. We've worked closely with you on important issues, and just really appreciate you being here and for all that you're doing. But just could you explain in just a couple of few words, you know, why does the church need an Office of Social Justice? You know, we understand world missions, we understand church planting. There's a little bit of debate of whether, like, a church should own a college, right?
Right, yeah.
Sphere sovereignty and all that.
Sure.
But why do we need social justice? Because that's pretty unusual for a church to have that.
Well, the Christian Reformed Church, and I think most churches that have a Reformed or an Orthodox kind of theology, understand that within that is a strong biblical message calling society and the church to a just kingdom, if you will. So it's part of working towards the kingdom of God. It's an important piece of that, and it's in our theology. So that's number one. But how we actually arrived at it is a very different route. And it happened because of the ministries that you mentioned. I was the West Africa Regional Director for the Christian Reformed World Relief Committee at that time. Now it's called World Renew. And I lived in Dakar, Senegal in the late 80s and early 90s. And one of my responsibilities was Sierra Leone, with our large program that we had in Sierra Leone. And most of your listeners, many of your listeners will understand that in the early 90s, between 1990 and 2000, the whole place fell apart because of blood diamonds. And any of you that have seen the movie Blood Diamond have an understanding of what happened. We experienced that. Our programs, $2 million worth of program stuff was destroyed in 2 places of the country. It took only a week and a half for the rebels to basically destroy 20 years of mission work. And we looked at each other and we said, what happened? What did we miss? We thought we were doing an integrated rural development project for the poor in Sierra Leone and doing church planting and a state-of-the-art mission effort. And it all was destroyed within a period of a week, and we never saw it coming. And then we realized that if we were serious about the mission of Christ, if we were serious about church planting, and if we were serious about really helping the poor and being Christ to the poor, we were going to have to be serious about international systems because it was the way that diamonds were marketed and purchased that fueled that war. So what choice do we have? If we're serious about what we're doing, if we say we love you, people of Sierra Leone, and we have the power to help change an international diamond marketing system, that's part of ministry. But that's justice. That's international work. And that's what we did. That's how we were formed. And now we've continued to do
the question, but I wanted our viewers to hear that because sometimes Christians don't quite get it. You know, so as a prison ministry, okay, they get it. We want to change sinful hearts. You know, people committed crimes and are in prison. But they don't realize always that sinful systems were also created by sinful hearts.
Absolutely, and that is particularly a strong point, I think, in the theology that you and I share. Things that sinful people create do bad things, and we can change those. We can change that. We created them, and we can change that creation. And that's why I so much respect what CBI has done, because not only Is it about saying to a prisoner, we love you and God loves you and we are
No.
going to study the Bible with you? It's also saying God loves you and we love you, and if you can't get a job when you get out,
That's a concern
because
for us.
that is a major concern for Christ and for us, because we love you as Christ loves you.
Well, we want them to have the freedom to live the Christian life that we teach them.
Absolutely. So how can you not do justice if
You need
you're
both.
doing ministry of any kind?
Yeah.
So that's our message. That's why the CRC created this little office, so that we could help spread that message and help the ministries, World Renew, World Missions, all of them are our partners.
Sure.
And we work with them and other groups to form
Well,
faith.
you guys have done a terrific job. Issues all the way from abortion to immigration to, all these things. But we want to start off today by talking about poverty, because that is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, not in the developing world, but right here.
Right.
And so, there's the cliche that rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And I don't want to go there, but the fact is that there are people in poverty. Tell us about that.
Especially in the last 10 years in Michigan, if you've lived in Michigan, or even if you've lived in some of the other states where this program is disseminated, and you have a very high unemployment rate, and if you at all go to a church with people who are unemployed, we all know how difficult it's been in the economy as it slowly picks up to dig into that long-term unemployment. And the long-term unemployment, a lot of those folks are people who have been in prison, people who have other issues that make them hard to employ, and they've been looking for jobs for years, 1 year, 2 years. That number has gone up to almost, I think, what did I see the other day? 12% of the possible workforce in Michigan have just stopped looking for work. They've been looking for work for 5 years.
And when they say in the country that the unemployment rate is 5.9, it doesn't count these folks, right?
It does not count those folks.
These folks that have just given up.
Right.
Sometimes there's mental, intellectual disabilities and that kind of stuff.
We have people who are working who are poor also, because they can only work part-time. That's
so
all they can find.
underemployed.
They're underemployed.
Right.
So there's all of that. People who are graduating from colleges are finding it difficult to get appropriate jobs now. So I think that's pretty obvious for anybody that's actually out there. But when you look at the numbers, it's even more shocking, because the wages, the wage levels for people in the middle and the lower segments of our economy have, I think as most people know, not only been stagnant until very recently, but they've actually, in relation to prices, gone slightly down. So we're not increasing our ability to thrive and to help others and to do ministry if we're in the middle class and lower class whose wages have been stagnating. So that's part of the issue that we're dealing with. But what's really important is, aside from all of the politics and aside from all of the ways of helping people, which we don't need to get into, there is a really critical biblical principle.
What is that?
And that is what's being called the circle of protection. And if you don't get anything at all from the Bible in terms of political directions, it strikes me that what we do see is Christ saying to us, you need to be concerned about the poor in your society, and you need to protect them. And one of the roles of government, whether people like to hear this or not, has always been to protect the very poor and the very vulnerable from the very rich and the very powerful. And it doesn't mean that the rich and powerful are always going to act badly or anything like that. It just means that human nature is that way. And so people need protection. And so there's 100 Christian leaders that now, for this next election cycle, have signed a document, and that includes Christian leaders that we know. The National Association of Evangelicals, Leith Anderson has signed on to this. Our own executive director, Steve Timmermans at the Christian Reformed Church, has signed on to this document that's called the Circle of Protection. And it is asking the candidates for president, who will soon be coming out of the woodwork, to make a 3-minute video describing to the American public what they would do as president to protect those who are poor and vulnerable among us. And I think that's a really great idea, and I hope that that actually happens. It did the last election cycle.
Okay, I want to stick with this subject.
Right.
Because this is extremely important, because there are people out there that are saying, oh, this is wealth redistribution, and all these kinds of issues. And I think we can take these head on. We're going to be right back after this. Stick with us.
Sure.
Are you in prison? Do you know someone who is? Through CBI Bible studies and encouragement from CBI instructors, more than 40,000 people behind bars are learning the truth about salvation through Christ and are developing deeper relationships with God. For an enrollment form, please visit us online at cbi.fm.
Welcome back to Crossroad Connection. I'm David Scheringa. I'm in the studio here today with my friend Peter Vandermeulen, who is the director of the Office of Social Justice in the Christian Reformed Church. And we're talking, there's so much we could talk about. I
Right.
mean, you could be on this show
You and I
every
could talk
week for a long time.
A week, yeah.
But we're talking about poverty in America.
Right.
And before the break, you used this phrase that you think biblically there should be a circle of protection around the poor. Now, and a number of church leaders and so forth have signed this document that they would like to see future candidates, and of course, as a ministry, we don't promote any particular candidates.
Neither do we.
But we need to be, I guess the way I put it is we want to be prophetic without dictating policy. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, yes.
What is a circle of protection? Is that like a safety net?
Yes, it's that, but it's a little more than that.
Okay,
it seems
what is
to me.
it?
I'll give a couple of examples, maybe, and let's see if that helps a little bit. It definitely is a safety net. It says, look, human beings, there should be some sort of a very secure floor, so that human beings who are in trouble, either because they've lost jobs, because they're, for whatever reason, it's not like you need to deserve this. You deserve this because you are a human being made in God's image. Whether you're a convicted felon who's paid his dues, or whether you're a completely innocent child, so to speak, you deserve to be able to live at a certain level of survival so that you can actually be an image of Christ, an image of God. I mean, that's the basic theological principle, it seems to me, behind this. And so that safety net, that floor, at least in most countries in the West, is a government safety net, a government floor. When I was growing up, when my dad got sick, he worked every day of his life, and he paid into Social Security. When my dad got sick, and we went on welfare. We had, in addition to help from the church, we had government cheese and government Spam, and I remember that. I remember those cans, and if it weren't for that, church folks helped us a lot, but we needed that food when I was growing up. When my father died, the only reason I could go to Calvin College and do what I'm doing now is Social Security and the death benefits from Social Security that I got as a son all through college. Now, people will say, well, your father paid into that, but
right.
I did the numbers, and what he paid in, even including
came out
interest, it was gone in the first year. We had 5 kids.
Yeah. Right.
So that was nothing but government safety net. It was not only saying, Peter, we care about you, but we care about being able to go forward and do what you can do. Go to college. And that wasn't a lot of money. It was $300 a month maybe, or something like that in those years. But I have always remembered that. And it wasn't the government that did that. It wasn't Washington. They just organized it. It was my fellow community members. It was you and others who were paying those taxes.
Right.
But they went to me because I had experienced the death of my father, and so we didn't have a breadwinner.
What about the
that
fact
is just
that,
beautiful.
Yeah, and what about the fact that every family gets a tax break for the number of children they have, right?
That's right. We get.
I mean,
we,
so that's the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. And
they didn't pay into that.
And for my house, if you have a mortgage, you get a tax break, and that's because it's thought that it's good for the community to have lots of people that own their own homes, and it is.
Now, before you said every person who's image bearer of God deserves this safety net.
Right.
Okay. When does that become an entitlement attitude?
Well, that's
How do we avoid that?
That's a good question. I think there's a fine line. I think it is an entitlement, actually. You know, let's
Okay,
let's
all
let's
right.
say it like it is. You are entitled
All right.
because of your the image of God that you carry. You are entitled from me, from the community. You're entitled to the basic necessities of what you need to be alive and to thrive. That doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. I mean, if you say, well, that means I don't have to do anything, I don't have to work, I don't have to relate, I just sit there and somebody keeps me alive. I mean, that's simply wrong. That's not what entitlement means. Entitlement means there's this basic set of rights and responsibilities that you have as a human being, and that's in community. And our governments are part of our community. Our churches are an important part of that community. But it can slide into an entitlement attitude, and that happens, I think we've seen that happen in the U.S. and in some other countries when you especially have a complete or near complete lack of opportunity for a particular class of people or a particular race of people or a particular group of people, such as felons who are coming out of prison and have a difficult time getting a job because we've made the rules that way.
And weren't some of our wasn't our safety net in some ways poorly structured because it ended up splitting up families.
That's right.
Rather than building stronger families.
there's a
So,
great-
right? So it wasn't the principle of the net,
No.
but we structured it in a sinful way.
That's right. We structured it in ways, you're right, and there's a good example. If I don't know how it is now, but some years ago, if you were on welfare and your husband came back to live with you and you were a good nuclear
They
family,
cut you off.
you lost your
Yeah.
benefits.
Right.
So no woman with children could make any. I mean, it was stupid to let your husband come back and live with you and be a real family because you wouldn't have your benefits, and your husband may or may not have been able to find a job. So we damaged, I think, the system, the policy.
Yeah.
Damaged families, maybe unintentionally,
Right.
but it's very obvious. It's not rocket science. We can change that.
Yes. We can
That's what we're
change that.
talking about.
What are the effects of poverty on American children?
Maybe an example. My wife works for an organization here in the Midwest that works with high-risk pregnancies, mothers who have very high-risk pregnancies, meaning a risk of low birth weights, bad outcomes, that kind of thing. So almost 100% of them, 100% of them are well below the poverty line. Their infant mortality rate was about 10 years ago 3 times the infant mortality rate of a white family, a white middle-class
Sure, I
family,
believe
right?
it. Yeah.
And so these programs were now instituted and developed to try to work individually and as a community with these mothers who are at risk of having really bad outcomes. Right? It's due to poverty, and when they did the research, it's also due to racism,
Sure.
and it's also due to the fact that almost 68%, I think, if I remember correctly, of the fathers are in the criminal justice system
Yeah, of
somewhere,
course.
right?
And
So-
and poor education.
and poor education, and then you have substance abuse issues on top of that.
right.
And when you look at when you put that all together, you say, how can any child have a chance?
Right.
In this environment, it will be a superhuman child that is able
That
to
could break
pull
through that.
themselves and break through out of that. So again, society, and this is not rocket science either. If we, meaning society, governments, churches, private institutions, invest in those children early on, which means beginning at pregnancy, right? Preventing abortions, bringing that pregnancy to term with a lot of intensive help, and then early childhood education. Every bit of research that has ever been done shows that not only do you have healthier children and stronger citizens and Christians, but you also save a lot of money.
Yeah.
in terms of prisons.
Even makes
in
physical sense.
Oh, it
Fiscal
makes
sense.
financial. Not only because Governor Snyder now, bless his heart,
Oh, yeah.
is actually got going. I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're actual investments. People, entrepreneurs, are saying we will invest in this early childhood education project, and then the state is saying, and if the numbers show that this results in fewer costs to the state 20 years from now, we will pay a certain percentage of that to these investors. So that's called social investing.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And so there's new models out there that
Yeah,
recognize
right.
that poverty is not only, it not only hurts people who are poor, it hurts all of us. It diminishes our communities, and it's expensive in the long run.
We're going to take another break here, but in the last segment, I want to touch on something quite controversial President Obama said a while back, and he said, "You didn't build this." We'll be right back after this.
Correcting Bible study lessons is crucial to helping inmates. To partner with CBI in this safe and secure role, please visit us at cbi.fm on the web.
Welcome back to Crossroad Connection. We've been having an invigorating discussion here with Peter Vandermeulen about poverty in America, how you feel that the church needs to be aware of these issues when they think about choosing someone to vote for.
Yep.
And so we'd like to see two people who want to be in office. What would you do about this? How would you take care of this circle of protection and so forth? President Obama made a very controversial statement, and he talking to wealthy people. He said, "You didn't build this," and that really got people upset. In fact, I think at the last one of the conventions, I think they ridiculed him. But Calvin has said, and John Calvin says an equally controversial thing, and he says that the poor are on earth for the salvation of the rich. Let's just talk about that a minute in terms of the fact that the society we need to have this communal rather than individualistic concern, and some that we have done as well. Some of us have done. We did have a lot of help.
Yes.
We grew up in homes with maybe two parents, and
Right.
we grew up on generations of privilege.
Right. Right.
So is there a way for people to understand that those who are the underprivileged, it's not just a matter of them
Right.
getting a work ethic. We want to help them with that.
Right.
I know you've been thinking about this. How do we get that message through that we have this responsibility to image bearers of God, and we should not think of ourselves as superior
Right.
because of what we have done or have?
Right. Well, I mean, if I had a recipe for that, for helping people think through that, I think I'd write a book and go on Oprah or something rather than.
I hadn't thought about that. If we had less than $1 million,
maybe we should. Yeah. No, but there are some over the years working with people in the pews. One thing I think I for sure have learned is. What we see, people's reaction, their political reactions, some of the hatred that you feel, sometimes in political meetings where political discussions are happening, or even religious discussions, most of that is based, in my experience, on fear. I mean, many of us, deeply afraid for ourselves, for our children, for our country,
for our stuff.
We live out of fear so much, and the Bible. I mean, this is your listeners will know this too. The most common phrase in the Bible is "Fear not." Fear not.
You're right.
And I mean, there's a reason for that. So much of our anger, our refusal to understand that we didn't do it all for ourselves, and the person who's standing on the street corner asking for money, didn't do that all by himself either. He had, it's part of a system that made it really difficult, and it made it easier for me. I mean, to understand that requires, I think, us to let go of our fear that we'll become like that if we lose our self-independence, and accept the need for other people around us. The fear that he or she might challenge me if we give him a hand up. I mean, we don't talk about that much, but there's a lot of thinking, I think, in the church, sadly, that has this limited pie. There's only so much of God's grace to go around.
Good point.
Or
Right.
love, or goods, and that's not
which is very dysfunctional. Huh?
It's very dysfunctional, and it's not even true biblically or theologically. I mean, we do have a God of abundance, right? I mean, that's essentially what life is. It's just profligate. It just goes all over the place if given half a chance. And so, yet we still have this pinched sort of fear that if I don't keep what I have, I mean, I'm going to retire in a few years. I have that fear.
Sure.
What's going to happen when I
Will
don't,
the money run out?
Right. All of this. And that's just, I've got to get over that because it makes me relate to people in wrong ways.
Yeah.
And out of fear and out of worry that myself and my own family and my own kids won't be okay. And that is just, I think, one of the critical faith formation things that we need to work on.
What can our viewers do? What can the church do? Number one, be not afraid.
Right.
God's in control. He's a God of plenty.
Exactly.
Number two, can they find this document that people have signed?
Yes.
And where is that?
It is on our website.
What is that?
Our website is just CRC Justice.
crcjustice.org.
Right, and if you type that in or Google that in, you'll go right to our opening page. And I don't know if it's on that opening page right now, but it surely will be as soon as I get back to the office.
And so, as a result of them understanding that, you just want them to be aware of this as they are, among other issues, but as they are choosing people for office, do those people get it?
Right.
Get this issue.
And it isn't about whether government does it or private people do it or corporations. We need, my own view is this is such a huge problem that it is every single one of those sectors of society has its role to play. But what we're really interested in is that presidential candidates understand that what we do about poverty in the United States is a critical political issue and one that they need to speak to so that we can evaluate them on their positions.
We're not suggesting a policy of handouts or things like that.
Not in the least.
This is a prophetic thing. Show us some ideas.
That's all we're asking.
Be creative. Give us ways to do it.
That's right.
Can people that are watching, if they wanted to have someone from your office come to their church to speak?
Absolutely.
Is that possible?
Absolutely. And there, on our website, there is a little communicate with us box. They can click on that. It'll go to us. Also, my website or my email address and all of our staff email addresses are on there. They can go to the staff page, email any one of us. We'll respond I guarantee you, we'll respond within a day or two at the most.
And is there a bibliography on the site?
Yes, there's lots of good resources.
So
tons
they
of good resources.
can be reading more and educating themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we got to close with just thanking you for being here.
You're welcome.
We
It's
know
a pleasure.
that Jesus cared for the poor, and we need to as well because we are all poor sinners.
Yes, we are.
Who have been blessed richly with the grace of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And how can we not share what he's done for us with others?
Exactly. David, thank you for all the work you do too here at CBI.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with you and so good to have you. And thank you for being with us. We hope that this was an interesting program for you. We hope that you'll be right here again next week.